Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. Today's guest, you all know, you might not recognize her name, but you definitely know her product. Wende Zomnir is the co-founder of Urban Decay. And before I recorded, I went to see how many naked palettes I have. I have 3. But what's so amazing is she co-founded the company in her 20s. So we're going to talk about this incredible career she's had. We were born the same year. We're both 57. So she's had an incredible career, and she's just launched a new company, Cali Ray, which is sustainable makeup. And we're going to talk about all of that too. So welcome, Wende.
Thank you. I'm super excited to talk to you today.
Oh my gosh. So I laughed so hard. Of course I do some homework and I'm reading my notes, and there's a really funny story about how you got sent home from school, maybe middle school or high school, for wearing too much makeup. So
I was, yes.
Tell us that story.
So I think I was in 8th grade, and I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and it's kind of the land of makeup. Like, it's kind of in your blood. And so I think it's really hard to get sent home from school for wearing too much makeup, but I managed to do it. I just remember really loving eyeshadow, and my mom had given me one of those like big makeup kits for Christmas. And I really, really was excited to use it. And I would tape pictures from magazines on my mirror and try to recreate the looks. It was kind of like pre-YouTube videos, how-to videos. And
we had no videos back then.
There was no online back then. There was a corded phone. So anyway, I really, really was excited to just like experiment with the makeup and try the makeup and then wear my looks to school. And I think I just went overboard one morning. So.
Well, and it made me laugh so hard because we are the same age. We graduated the same year. What was with the blue eyeshadow and the blue mascara? And we put it on as thick as we could.
Yeah, I have to say, I was not a blue eyeshadow girl, but okay. I did love blue mascara. And I loved that sort of aquamarine mascara. I loved how it looked going through the light. It was just like, but I did love like all those iridescent eyeshadows and lots and lots of frosty things.
Yeah, frost was definitely big in the 80s, along with our big hair.
Our big hair. Yeah.
Big. And it's funny because I just got rid of my big hair a few years ago because I did wear it so well that I was like, no, it'll come back. It'll come back. So I had to go with straight and no bangs anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was fascinated when I read. I have a daughter who's 24. I just interviewed Hannah Storm, and I was talking to her. I'm like, I loved sports in my 20s, but I never thought of being the first woman sportscaster. I loved makeup in my 20s, but I never thought of inventing a makeup line like Urban Decay. Did you have entrepreneurial parents? Like what gave you that bug in your 20s?
Yeah. So I had a dad who was, he was a corporate guy, but I always remember him talking about his, these entrepreneurial dreams. And he never, took the plunge because he had this family to support and he was a responsible guy. And, but I always remember him thinking about that stuff. And when I got my first job in my 20s, I really loved it, but I remember thinking I wanted to do something on my own. And a little bit of that like fabric cubicle scene kind of sucked the soul right out of me every time I had to go to work. So I always knew there was something in me that was entrepreneurial. And when I moved out to California, that's what I was really looking for. I was looking for different ways that I could get into business and express myself. And it never would have occurred to me in the mid 90s. Like now everyone's like, I'm going to start a beauty brand. So Sandy and Lerner and I always joke, like, we literally built the freeway that the beauty industry like travels on. And now I have to merge into traffic with my new brand. So, but I think the important part is I met another female entrepreneur who mentored me. She had started Cisco Systems. I mean, she's like as successful and incredible and amazing. She's a genius as it comes. And it took, I was just a girl from Texas that, I wanted to be a broadcaster, and those dreams were kind of squashed for me. Well, like, you're just from here. You couldn't possibly do that. And so it took another woman to like say to me, like, to believe in me and go, well, you're exactly the right person to do this. You love makeup. You understand marketing. Like, why, you could talk to the PR people. Like, she had it all worked out for me. And then as it also turned out, I had a knack for product development. So when I get asked a question like this, I always loop it back to, it's so important for us at this point in our lives to be looking for those young women that need that boost of confidence from someone who's been there, done that, and who can believe in them. And you never know what they can achieve if you just give them that little bit of belief and a little bit of push.
And I love that you say that. I mentor college students. And one of the things, I go into the careers and marketing class every single semester, and I tell my story. I graduated with a political science and German double major, and never used any of that throughout my career because I couldn't get into law school. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. I couldn't pass the LSAT or get a good enough score. I ended up in marketing and PR, and I owned a retail store. And then in my 50s, I launched a podcast, became a TV lifestyle host, and a QVC guest host in my 50s. And they all look at me like, wait, you can do this like in your 50s? So it's so important to help. You're exactly right. To help them understand, pivoting, and you can do anything you want to do. Especially now with the internet and connections, and the world is their oyster.
Right. And you've made a lot of connections throughout your life, so why not tap into them? And I also think it's really important in terms of like staying young, feeling young, keeping your mind busy. Like you got to keep doing stuff. You got to keep trying new stuff. And when I launched Urban Decay back in the mid 90s, it was a completely different set of challenges. Everyone's like, oh, you've been there, done that. You know what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, it's a completely different problem to solve now. Before, the barriers to entry were like, how do I get this stuff made? How do I find labs? How do I find packaging? Well, now the internet, you can do that like in a second if you wanted to. The barriers to entry now are, there's so much noise in the business. There's so many more media outlets. There's so many, this whole influencer thing is completely, it started back with us, but now it's a whole data-driven business, right? When I started and I was like an innovator in influencer marketing, it was about just relationships with people and building relationships. And now it's a full, like, let's slice and dice the data. And so it's a whole new challenge for me in the industry now, which I'm really loving and enjoying. And it just keeps me around, keeps my mind active and keeps me challenged.
So one of the most creative things with Urban Decay, and we didn't mention, you did start out in advertising after college.
I did. I started at a big ad agency in Chicago.
So you're creative. You've got that side. But I don't want to call it the shtick, but kind of the shtick of Urban Decay was the way you named your products.
Yes.
Naked palette, probably the number one biggest selling eyeshadow palette ever. What made you do that? Because I'm guessing that had a big part of the growth of the company. It was catchy. It was, people were like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So we had always named our products crazy things, but we were more known for like alternative colors, because really the white space that Sandy and I saw when we started Urban was, there was department store makeup, right? There was no Sephora. There's no Ulta. Well, there may have been Ulta, but it was just like mass market in a salon. It wasn't what it is today, where it's selling a lot of prestige makeup. So we just saw this white space. There was no bold color out there that was high quality. You could find it at the drugstore, but back then the drugstore makeup was really, really low quality.
Yes.
So
I remember.
yeah, it was really bad. So, and then if you went to a high-end store, like the edgiest you could get was the mauve eyeshadow. So we really found this white space where like we could make these like crazy iridescent colors and blues and greens and purples. And there was a market out there for them. And it wasn't so girly. It was a little more gritty. And that was really different too. So that's what really turned the industry on its head and was really kind of fun about originally Urban. And then Naked came about because I was traveling so much for work. And, I would go on these trips, these press trips, and I would all these different outfits. And I always have eyeshadow match my outfit because that was my thing. But you always needed a basic set of nudes to build that base of your eye. And then you could put your crazy color, around it. And I was like, it would be great if we could just make a little quad of eyeshadows that were like the perfect shadows, and you'd be done with it. And so I asked two of the other women I worked with in product to bring their 4 favorite neutral shadows in. And we laid them all out, and it made this really great palette. I mean, we swapped a couple, but it was this really like kind of right off the bat. And we were like, well, that's a perfect palette, because everyone had a slightly different point of view on what the perfect nude was. And that became the Naked palette. But we couldn't, as Urban Decay, launch a palette of neutrals. We had to make it edgy. So that's where Naked came about.
Aha. So how again, we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't. So in terms of marketing here, you're young, you're in your 20s. How did you get it out there? Like, how did Urban Decay grow? I know you're saying edgy, but you still have conservative people. You've got to find that media outlet or that company that's willing to say, yeah, we get this. We want to give this a try.
Yeah. So by the time we launched the Naked palette, we were a little more established and had a regular PR firm. We're getting regular coverage. But when we first started, I literally went to the hardware store and made press kits out of hardware store supplies. And I would look on the mastheads of magazines and find out who the beauty director was. And I would mail them a box. And then I started just calling and scheduling appointments. And I went to New York with my stuff and just started getting press. And that's really how we launched the brand. And then I tried something else kind of innovative. I had met these girls that were sort of like it girls in New York and tastemakers. And so I would send them a box of makeup and cash, and they would go to parties and pass out the makeup to kind of get it in with the cool crowd. So it was kind of social media marketing before there was social media marketing. Before there was the internet to do it on a broad scale. I was doing it in a small scale and trying to kind of just reach these kind of cool tastemakers one by one. So that was one thing we did. We did these like crazy trade shows, and we would grab like the Teamsters that were building the booths, and we would paint their nails, and people would come around and talk about it. So we would try to make
awesome.
interesting moments happen, even though they were on a small scale and they weren't getting amplified, to scale on a social media platform or on a YouTube. They were still being talked about. And so the process happens a lot slower back then than it does now, right? You can blow up a brand pretty quickly if it gets the right traction and the right virality. Whereas back then it was a little more of a slow burn.
How long did it take Urban Decay to build to that point where you sold to L'Oreal?
We were about 15 years old. Yeah, I had been doing it about 15 years when we sold. So, it took quite a long time.
Now, when you sold, were you ready to sell, or did just this great offer come along?
So I think what happened was we had, there's a data monitoring service that tells everyone the rankings of brands in terms of sales. And you don't qualify to show up on that unless you're in 3 retailers. This is, at least was the rule back then when we sold to L'Oreal. And so I don't think anyone had any idea how big our business was. But we finally ended up with like a 3rd online retailer that put us over the edge. And then all of a sudden, one week, we popped up on this report as like the number 8 makeup brand in the country. And people's minds were blown. So that started kind of this chain of events. It also was really interesting for us because we were trying to expand internationally. Like that was kind of the next place to go. Once you crack that top 10 brands in your category, you sort of need to go abroad. And it was just really taxing on our organization. So we realized we needed a big strategic partner to help us take that next step. And I also was in kind of, to be honest, my kids were at that point entering like middle school. And it was a real grind to be running your own business. And it seemed like a really good time to sell and perhaps be able to take a tiny step back. It didn't end up working that way, unfortunately. It ended up getting busier. But I thought that now would be a good time. Like my kids are at a good age. They really need their, they need you more during middle school than almost any other time. And so that just seemed to be the right decision to make. And so we started the process and had a few offers. And
yeah, it's really interesting. I interviewed Elise Aarons, who's the co-founder of Kate Spade, and you all have such similar stories. She met Katie in college, and they kind of accidentally, they were in their 20s, same thing. They didn't know what they didn't know, so they just blew forward. They just
did it.
And, but the same thing, they did it for about 15, 20 years. And she wanted to be with her girls a little bit. They were at that age. So it is interesting because it is hard. I've interviewed a lot of incredibly successful women. And when I talk about, being a mom on top of that, they're like, don't let any entrepreneur tell you you can do everything. You can try to do everything, but it's hard.
Right. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And if you have a partner or husband or that's also working and has a big career, it's really hard. And I would say, you just need to find trusted help wherever you can get it. But the thing I love about having started Cali Ray when I was 54, 55 is that it's like my kids are in college. I mean, my youngest was home. He just started college this year. But he, once they start driving, they're like
they're out.
So it was a really good time for me to transition out of being needed to being needed in a different way, to my purpose, right? I just transferred my purpose to a new business. And so I actually felt like it was a really good time to dive into something new. So
I do. I talk about this. I have some girlfriends. Like I've always worked, but because I worked for myself, I could go to hockey games and lacrosse games and I could do things. But sometimes I couldn't. But my kids understood that I worked too. Dad works, mom works. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm empty nesting and I have so many fun things and I worry about my friends who didn't do anything at all. And now the kids are gone and they don't know what to do. It's like, it's nice to, to pull it back when you need to. But
there's something for everyone. So my sister-in-law is a good example of that. She kind of called me once her youngest was kind of away, had been away for like a year and sort of like talking about what she might do. And she really, I think, she ended up getting into real estate and she was such a like kind of in the community she lives in, really so connected. And so she really took those skills she had developed as like, she was the chairman of PTA. And like, there's so many skills you develop as a mom that you can then apply to that next chapter. So I just felt like that ended up being the perfect thing for her because she knows so many people in the community because she had really been so involved, as a mom. And so it really gave her a leg up in the real estate business and she's been incredibly successful. It's been fun to watch her journey.
I love that you say that because I actually work with a lot of real estate agents. And that's the thing I tell them that, you ran the booster club, you ran the swim team, you were, the CFO, the CEO, you might not have been getting paid, but you have a pretty impressive track record resume from being home with your kids.
And just trust within those people that know you, like real trust, like they trusted you with their kids. So, there's real trust there.
And how great for you. Your boys are probably really proud of you. They saw you working, you pulled back a little bit and now you're taking off with something new. So,
most important was just FYI for anyone that has awesome daughters. I have awesome boys who really respect women. And basically, when they would be done with school, they would come to my work. And it was an office. Urban Decay was a big office full of these like incredibly talented, successful, driven, well-dressed, kind of cool women. And so that's their model. I'm just saying.
No, I love it. And it's funny. I wrote a book years ago when my son was in high school and I got my first copies and I was so excited. And he goes, oh, is that what you were doing at midnight when I came in at night? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
because I was doing all the other stuff. That's when I wrote the book.
Right.
But they're proud. You can tell that.
Yeah.
And it's good to see, for the boys to see women, strong women. It's important.
It is. And
Really.
I have so much, so much boy energy in my life. So I have to come over and start a new makeup company and get some more girl energy.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to talk about that in a second. And I was looking at your Instagram, and your boys are in college together, which my kids did the same thing. They're 2 years apart. They both went to Virginia Tech. You're going to love it. It's so fun. You never have to split up parents' weekends, and
Right.
it just makes it really fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited that they're both here, and I don't see them very often. They're fully away at school, but if I need a fix, I can drive to Los Angeles and they can drive here.
That's awesome. Okay, Cali Ray.
Yeah,
Let's
Cali
talk
Ray.
about that.
So I was sort of phasing out of my Urban Decay journey. It just felt like time. We'd had the pandemic, and I had kind of talked to people I worked with at L'Oreal, like, gosh, I'm missing being an entrepreneur. Like, being a founder at a big company it's not as fun. Like, you're just sort of like, I love getting my hands dirty with a product. Like, I love inventing product and testing everything. And instead you become like, okay, here's what we're going to launch. And they bring you in a conference room and get your opinion. And it's not the same as like crafting the thing from scratch yourself, right? It's like being the taster and not the maker. And so I really wanted to get back into making things. Like, that was, my original story. Like, everyone's like, well, what was the sort of, like, what kind of kid were you? And I was the kind of kid that would I was always making things. And I would ask my mom, like, do you think I could sell this? Like, I'd make these weird, ugly necklaces out of straws or whatever. And you're like, no, like, I was always making things and wanting to like sell them. So this is what I'm meant to do. This is my calling. And I felt like it was time for me to do that again. And L'Oreal had taken all of their West Coast brands and they were moving them to an office near the airport. And I just felt like, okay, it's time for me. Like, Urban Decay was in my backyard, right? I could ride my bike there. And it just felt like the time to be like, okay, new chapter. So I was on a surf trip with my family and I was struck. I took a break from surfing on this uninhabited island, paddled my board over, sat down, and there was a ton of plastic trash on this uninhabited island. And it just in the middle of nowhere. And it kind of killed me. And I was like, the next real mission in beauty, because our mission at Urban Decay was to democratize beauty. Like, we were really the first brand to say beauty should be about self-expression, not about aspiring to look like this perfect woman that we have defined as beautiful. And you could take one step closer to looking like her if you buy our product. Instead, Urban was about like, you're awesome. How do you want to express yourself? And so now that's table stakes in the industry. Like, if you tried to build an aspirational beauty brand, like, there's no market for you. So I felt like mission accomplished there. What's the next mission? And really, beauty has a sustainability problem. And so I thought the real mission was to jump into how can we get makeup as sustainable as possible. Shampoo, skincare, it's a lot easier because the bottles are bigger and that is accommodated by curbside recycling. Whereas makeup bottles, you're really looking to like recycle existing materials because they're probably not going to get recycled again. And then just drawing attention to that so the venues for recycling small packaging are more well-known. So those are the kinds of things we tried to do with this new mission. And my personal thing had always been clean beauty. People didn't realize that because it wasn't really a brand pillar for Urban Decay. But I had built the office out of non-off-gassing materials. I offered yoga classes for the employees. Everyone was allowed to bring their dog for emotional support before that was a thing. I had a biodynamic garden people could pick their lunch from, and we would harvest once a week and distribute the food. And then I also took all the parabens out of the products over 18 years ago, before that was a thing. And I even tried building the components out of corn plastic, but because of the way it had to be shipped and where it had to go, it negated the carbon footprint we would have saved. So we ended up not doing that, but we were always exploring sustainability and making the products cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And this was before anybody cared about any of it. So I just decided I really wanted to lean into that.
And I wanted to ask you, because back then that wasn't a thing. What got you into that? How did you learn about sustainable products back then?
Well, I would always ask the question, like, can we make this with recycled paper? And so I had vendors who knew I was interested in it. And I'd start poking around, but I'm also kind of a voracious reader about all kinds of other things and how can they apply. And so I had been reading about like polymers made from corn instead of from petroleum. And basically, I wanted to see if I can injection mold the corn plastic instead of a petroleum-based virgin plastic. So that's kind of where the whole thing started. And now the options for materials are so much more interesting. We're actually doing, this tube that's sitting on my desk. This is made out of a sugarcane plastic, which is pretty cool. But now we're adding what I call recycled air to it. So we're sequestering carbon out of the air, pulling it into a polymer form, and then mixing it with the sugarcane plastic to create a carbon sink in the plastic. So taking carbon out of the air and putting it in your tube.
Wow. And cool. How is that cost-wise compared to the
It's definitely more expensive. So you're going to see like a lot of times my products, like I build them from the ground up. So it's really hard for brands to be retroactively sustainable because you've built a product model and a cost of goods model. And you've got to add in cost to add for these recycled materials that cost more. So what we do is we build from the ground up. So we don't do a lot of like crazy extra decoration. We save costs. We don't emboss the boxes. We use a slightly thinner paper. We do a lot of little things to shave out of the basic product so that you still get the great stuff inside, but maybe the tube's not quite as fancy. Maybe the box isn't quite as like glossy or shiny, but the box is recyclable and you're not paying for that. You're paying for what's inside and the sustainable package.
And what kinds of products do you have?
So our biggest product is a product called Come Hell or High Water Mascara.
So back to the name.
I love it. This is here's the full size. Here's the full size of it. And I'm not trying to be like hawk my products on your podcast.
No. And a lot of it's audio. So people can watch the video and see, but it's a big tube.
It's a big tube. But what's cool about this tube, it's a tubing mascara. So it's a clean, good for your lashes. It's got argan oil and mascara. I think if you do see the video, I do not have false lashes on. These are my lashes with the mascara on them. And what you're going to love for women of a certain age, or really anybody who's active or anything, is a lot of times you get really smudgy underneath at the end of the day. This is a tubing mascara, so it's zero smudge. It will never smudge until you take it off. It's better than waterproof because it's nourishing for the lashes. It just comes off with warm water, but I can surf in this and it doesn't come off. So surf in it, work out in it, zero smudge. It rolls off in little tubes. That's why it's called a tubing mascara. Instead of dissolving into a smudge, it rolls off. And the container for the mascara itself is made from 100% upcycled ocean plastic that's been harvested out of the ocean. So
that's awesome.
Pretty cool.
It really is awesome. Now, are you in any big box retailers? Do we just get it from the website?
You can get it from the website, but our biggest retailer, who's been my partner for ever and ever, is Sephora. So we're exclusively at Sephora is our retailer, and you can get it in any Sephora store across the US or Canada or on Sephora.com. And I've been in partnership with Sephora for a very long time through both Urban and now Cali Ray. And so it's been a great journey with them. They're really great retailer, and probably most of your listeners have a Sephora account, but if you don't, there's awesome rewards.
Yes, there are. That's great. All right, and you were talking about surfing and working out. Girl, you look fabulous.
Oh,
I mean, fabulous. And you answer my question. Like I throw that out periodically, bikini or no bikini at our age. You look unbelievable. So what do you do? Besides starting companies and blowing them up and raising two boys.
Yeah.
But
so Yeah, my spare time is usually active time. So a lot of what makes me happy, my vices are coffee and exercise. So I probably do too much of both of those. The coffee's not helping me, but the exercise definitely is. And I would say when I discovered lifting weights, I enjoyed my workouts even more, and my body composition completely changed. I didn't know I had this body inside me. I was always like a girl that was a little, like, I was thin, but I was a little soft. And so just lifting weights has just made me like better at all the sports I play. So I play a lot of tennis. It hasn't made me better at my yoga. I'm a little less flexible, but that's okay because it's a better balance. And it makes me a better snowboarder. It makes me a better surfer. All the kinds of different sports I like to play, it just makes me better. And I do think, and I'm sure you're hearing it in the media more and more now. It was kind of a crazy thing when I started CrossFitting, like, right after I had my second son. But now I think this idea of women over 50 lifting weights has become sort of this thing. And I hear people say like, oh, should I just do like 5 or 10s? I'm like, no, you got to go heavy. You do need someone to show you how to go heavy, right? So don't try to go do this on your own. Definitely get a coach or join a class, but you want to be lifting things that are slightly uncomfortable for fewer reps. Not, I'm not looking for 20, 25. Like you got to be doing like 3, 4 and then rest and then a set if you want to get the benefits of weightlifting. So to me, that it's kind of the biggest thing. I have an extra garage and I built out a whole gym and I'm over there all the time. Like just, even if I can only get in a lift for the day, that's what I do.
Yeah. Well, you look fantastic. And it is really important to share that because that's one of the biggest things for women over 50. We need to be lifting weights. We need muscle mass because that helps with balance and strength and all those things as we get older that we're going to lose.
Yeah. And bone density too, like you definitely want to be building your bone density, and lifting heavy helps you do that. You just, again, you really want to be working with someone that can show you the correct form. It's so easy to say, oh, I'm going to start deadlifting and then be deadlifting with your lower back instead of with your glutes, right? Not only is that going to injure you, but number 2, you're not going to get the perky, cute butt you want by doing it wrong. So you got to get someone to show you how to do it.
Isn't that great that at 57, you can talk about your perky, cute butt?
I feel like, honestly, I feel like my butt's the best it's ever been.
Oh, it is. I feel the best. I feel I look the best I've ever looked at this age, which is, the best is yet to come.
That's right.
So 30 minutes always goes so fast, Wendy, but I wrap up every episode with the same 2 questions. What is the greatest thing you've accomplished since you've turned 50?
Well, I would say getting both my boys into a great school and starting Cali Ray.
Yeah, I love that you've done that in your 50s. Just incredible. And then where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Well, I see myself maybe spending more time snowboarding and surfing in different fun places around the world with my husband.
Oh, that's awesome. Just great. So everybody listening and watching, such an inspiring entrepreneurial story. If you know anyone, looking in that next chapter in their 50s, or just the end part that we talked about, the health and fitness, I feel like we're going to live forever, being strong businesswomen, strong women, good moms, good wives. I don't know. I just feel like anything's possible for us.
I think anything's possible. And if you're looking for a sport, like, because I think you want to lift, but then you also got to put your strength to good use. Yeah. That was always my thing. It's like, you can go to the gym, be a gym rat all day long, but then go put it to good use. Go do something fun, something competitive. I think it's great for women to play things where they have to keep score. Like we tend to not want to do that sometimes. So, I mean, more and more young women now are being raised like as competitive athletes, but maybe not so much our age. I mean, I'm a big tennis player, but I picked up, like I can just jump into pickleball games for fun. But I am a big advocate for women our age playing some sort of paddle or racket sport because it's really good for your brain. It helps stave off dementia, keeps your balance active. So it's really like, think about that. If you're like, I'm kind of looking for a sport, like try pickleball. Like
Pickleball, right. It's
watching
everywhere
that ball
too.
hit the paddle and being strategic, it's super important for your brain.
Yeah. I just started playing. It's pretty fun. Like it's
really fun. Yeah. If you didn't play tennis before, maybe start with pickle. But
yeah, and I did start with tennis. So, but
I love
it
tennis.
is fun. So we'll have everything in the show notes, but check out Wendy's new line, Cali Ray. It sounds amazing, great for the environment. And we know that you're selling amazing products. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun to talk to you.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.